With all the new technology and the abundance of information on the web, you would think that buying or selling or understanding the real estate market would be easier than ever. But ask yourself one question. Now that you've done your homework and you think you know what's going on, what do you do next? Good morning, everyone, and welcome. This is 10 o'clock on Tuesdays, and as you know, at 10 o'clock every Tuesday, we talk about what's going on in the real estate world, more specific about how we can help you in this real estate world. As I said on the beach, what do you do next? And today we're going to be talking about off-market, what that actually means. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Should you be wary of it? Should you take advantage of it? We're going to get into that in detail this morning. But before I do, let me introduce myself. My name is Stewart Fournier. I'm a residential realtor here in Manhattan Beach, California. I've been practicing for about 18 years. My wife and I, Randy, work as a team here in the South Bay area. We represent Hermosa, Manhattan Beach, Redondo Beach, the outskirts as well, Torrance, El Segundo. We also work the West Side. We're a little unique in that regard. We cover a large area of Los Angeles. That's a little different than most people. We have a background that allows us to do that. I won't get into detail as to what that is, but if you have any questions and you live in those outlying areas, we're happy to help you in any way that we can. One thing I want to mention, obviously, is we're on Facebook Live today. We're on here every Tuesday at 10 a.m. And actually, we may have a format change in the future. We're always going to be on at Tuesdays at 10 o'clock. But I actually may be coming on a couple of times a week for a shorter amount of time. What I've found by doing these blogs is that you can take a small subject and end up talking about it forever. And we like to keep these blogs at about 10 or 15 minutes at the most. So I'm going to do my very best today to keep this as short as possible. Because really what I want to do is develop an audience here and have you interact with me actually on Facebook Live, and that's the idea. You know, we've been doing this for about 15 weeks now, and it's been a lot of fun, and I'm really enjoying it. But more importantly, I want to get to your questions. I want to get to your concerns. And so if you're happy to be catching me right now, please feel free to ask a question. We're on a sort of a different platform where I don't see if you're actually watching at this time, but if you ask a question, I will see it, and I'll be able to answer it right away. So please, I'm encouraging you to ask questions today about anything related to real estate. It doesn't have to be what we're talking about today, which again today is about off-market off-market properties and why they may be a good thing, why they may not be a good thing for you. So we'll get into that in just a second. But again, I want to stress that if you have any questions and you are interested in anything related to real estate, we will be happy to answer your questions. And as a result of any questions that you ask, we're going to give you a free coffee bean card. So how's that for a nice bribe? So welcome everyone. Also, if you happen to catch this and you're not catching us live, please also feel free to ask a question in our comment section down below, and we'll be happy to answer that as well. We'll answer you right away, and then we'll also answer it on the next broadcast. Okay, so let's talk about off the market. First of all, what does off the market really mean? Well, usually what off the market means is that a listing agent has the confidence of a owner, and they don't necessarily want to sell their property the conventional way. In other words, they don't want to have open houses. They don't want to put it on the MLS. And for those of you that don't know exactly what the MLS is, I just did a broadcast last week or maybe the week before. So please feel free to see that particular video blog that I did. And it'll tell you all about what the MLS is. And they just don't want to have showings. They don't want to interrupt their lives. They don't want to be involved in having to fix their house up. They may not want to spend the kind of money that's necessary in order to spruce the house up or Always make it available for anyone to see in its pristine manner. These are the kinds of things that people who sell off the market generally are trying to avoid. And so what happens is typically a listing agent will still have a contract with that person. However, they will actually ask not to be on the MLS. They will actually ask not to be promoted. And so that's kind of the trade-off. Now, the question, of course, becomes, well, why would someone do that? Why would someone want their house off the market? And the truth of the matter is it's kind of twofold. The very first reason is that in some regards, and this is why it's probably not an advisable position to take with your house, there's really not a zeal to want to sell your house. In other words, you're just kind of throwing it out there and seeing what it's worth and seeing if you're getting some action on it. You may not be as motivated as most people who have their house listed are, and you just want to see, sort of give a test of the market and see what your house is worth. And that's one reason. The other reason, as I stated before, is that someone really does want to sell their house, but they just don't want to go through the pains of open houses, showings, getting the house ready, making appointments, and making sure that the house is clean or I should say clean, but in other words, presentable when there is when there is someone who's interested, and they just don't want to go through that hassle. Now, I can understand that, and I can understand that there's a lot of effort that goes into taking the time to sell a house, and people just don't want to bother with it. But the bottom line is that you need to look at that a little differently. Actually, let me not get ahead of myself. If that's your intent, if you really could you're not really motivated to sell your house for a specific reason other than to find out the value of your house, you're not really going to get what you think is a test market of what's going on. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. What I mean by that is, if you're not properly actually presenting your house to the market, and that is to say those that are on their computer, on their phone rather, I should say, nobody's on a computer anymore, they're all on phones, which is even going to make my point stronger. Unless you're on someone's phone, you're not on the market. You're not getting exposure. You're not going to get a true test of what your house is really worth. What you're going to get is people that hear about your house through the rumorville, through rumors, through the networks of realtors that are out there. And that's probably the least impressive way to get exposure. Now, what's the first rule of advertising? If you really want to do a successful test, if you really want to find out who out there in the market is willing to write a contract, in other words, willing to give you the money today, those are the people that you will not be exposed to, because those people are not going to take the time and effort like they used to, because nowadays all they have to do is look at their phone and see what's on the market. So your house is not going to get the true exposure. Your house is not going to get the true barometer or thermometer, whatever you want to, whichever metaphor I can use here, to get a true test of the market. So you may be just really wasting your time, in my opinion. You're always going to have that lingering doubt, especially if you actually do find someone who's interested. If you do find someone that's interested and you have your house off the market, what's the biggest thing you're going to ask yourself once you've actually sold it to that person? And the biggest question that you're going to ask yourself when you've sold it to a person off the market, when you really were just trying to see whether it was a test, is, you guessed it, did I really sell it for all it was worth? And that's really what this is all about. As a seller, what's your main motivation? Your main motivation is to get absolute value for your property. And this is not the way to do it, in my opinion. So the other exception, another exception, though, for selling off the market is the fact that you truly, truly don't want that normal, conventional hassles of open houses, of showings, again, as I said just a minute ago. So if you're going to do that, and if that's truly something that you just don't want to go through, I think what you're going to have to do is realize that number one, you won't get the proper exposure, and number two, as a result, you may have to accept the fact that you're going to have to sell your house for a little less than you probably could get it if you were to expose it. Again, the first rule of advertising is exposure. Unless your house is being exposed to the market, which moves extremely quickly nowadays, you're not going to get the choices that you probably are seeking. You're just simply not. Now, there are, again, exceptions, as I've said before. It's pretty rare I sell houses off the market, to be honest with you, because once people get the true understanding of getting absolute value for the house, for what their house is worth, discouraged from doing that. And I do discourage you from doing that. You're just not getting the exposure that you need to get in order to sell your house. And there's practically any realtor that has enough experience knows this as well. Now, I forgot my point. I'm sorry. Okay, I was talking about the few times that I actually will sell property off the market. If a seller truly is not going to want to go through the pains of spending the money to get their house ready, doesn't want open houses, and doesn't necessarily want to fall through with complete exposure, then we can sell something off the market. But I just, again, don't suggest it. And if someone comes to you, I wouldn't suggest it either. So we're at 11 minutes. I've got about a couple of minutes to go. I want to touch on developers a little bit, because off-the-market properties tend to be more of a developer situation. That is to say, developers that are buying homes for land value only. In other words, tear-downs wherein there is no value in the home, and builders are going to basically mow the house down. This is a majority of the off-the-market situations, and typically the reason that they're off the market is that realtors and builders are approaching people who they know do not want to either remodel their house, obviously build on it, and they just want to cash out and get what's ever available to them in terms of lot value. Now, typically what happens in this situation is that even if you're in that situation where you really don't want to do anything with your house, you simply want to move on, you have the choice of exposure still as well, even though you know you're going to sell it to a builder. And typically what happens is that you will get more money from a person that we refer to as an end user. In other words, there are plenty of people out there that want to build their brand new house on your lot. And these people will tend to give you a little bit more than a developer will. So developers know that, end users know that, and there's a negotiation usually between the listing agent who has the connect with that person who wants to sell their property and the developer and those that actually want to buy. So even if you have a house that's a teardown and you're going to sell it for lot value, I still suggest you go on the market, put it on the market, because again, you're going to get exposure. Exposure is the number one rule here. And I'll get into that a little bit more on other subjects, but again, let me just caution you. Anyone that approaches you that says they have a buyer, that's terrific. I mean, bird in the hand, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But should you be suspect to finding out the true value of your home, even though you have someone in the door that's offering you something? And the answer to that is yes. You really should take the time. This is your largest investment, potentially your largest investment, and you want to make the most of it. Now, people's motivation for selling your house is something you should question all the time. And they should have the patience and they should have the will to allow you to be able to figure out for yourself whether that's a fair price by simply exposing your property and making sure that others know that your house is for sale as well. And that's the point I'll leave you with today. Make sure that everyone knows your house is for sale in order to get full exposure, in order to make sure that you're confirmed that this is what the market is willing to pay for your house. So that is it for today. I'll leave it at that. We're at 14 minutes. I just want to mention one other thing before we go off the air. A couple things, actually, excuse me. Number one, I didn't get a chance to mention a little bit about our background. Randy and I have been in the practice for well over a combination of 35 years. We've dealt with short sales. We've dealt with brand new bills. We've dealt with developers, obviously. We've dealt with foreclosures. We've dealt with 1031 exchanges. We've dealt with probate. We've dealt with just about every aspect of real estate. So we are happy to help you in any way that we can. We're obviously very easy to get a hold of via text. Maybe even the phone, something new, right? But we do like to talk to our customers. We like to, our clients, excuse me. We like to spend the time necessary to make sure that you're comfortable about every sequential move in this process. And that's why I said what I said on the beach. There is so much to understand and so much to comprehend, and you really do need a coach. We're a lot of things nowadays. We wear a lot of hats, but probably the most important hat that we wear is the coaching hat, the hat that is the objective point of view for you to make sure that you're educated about the market and that you're educated about the moves that you make and that you protect those moves, because nowadays you're going to sign your name about 75 times and lo and behold, no one can really know exactly what all those signatures mean, but by the time you work with us, you're going to know a lot of it. And that's why we take the time to do these blogs. And that's why I encourage questions. I want to know what's going on out there in terms of how you perceive the market. Is it too much for you to handle? What aspects of it are frustrating you? These are the kinds of things we like to get into. So please feel free to leave comments and suggestions for future broadcasts, and we'd be happy to get into them. The last thing I'll leave you with is, again, on each broadcast, we invite you to take our app. It's called the Fournier app. You can take a picture on your cell phone of any house in America, any house in the country. You're driving by and you take a picture, and that picture will reveal the value of that house, the value of the houses around it, the school systems. There's even a market analysis right on the app itself. And the most important thing is that you'll be able to contact us at real time. In other words, from the app itself, if you have a question about the house that you've just taken a picture of, you can ask us right on the app and we'll respond immediately if we have our phone right on us, because we can see it. We don't see you on the app using it unless you ask us a question. But please download that app. Just leave your email. We'll give you a link to it, and have fun with it. It's a lot of fun. My clients are really enjoying it. So we'll see you next time, 10 o'clock Tuesdays, everyone. We're here every Tuesday. I'm encouraging you to ask questions. I'm encouraging you to be involved in our process here of educating you about real estate. Bye-bye, everyone.